So we have here
Okay, again, okay, in
Kortschnoj.
modern time, we have a very nice game between Spassky and Kortschnoj, you know, one of two strongest Soviet grandmasters in that time. Okay, Spassky with white plays against the Queen's Indian. And as I told you before, this is the alternative, the main line with G3 instead of Petrosian line with A3, you know.
Yeah.
And the other possibility is to play modestly like this, E3, you know, or another possibility, the third one, you know. But G3, bishop G2 is the main line, of course. Okay, bishop E7, castle, castle. Here, instead of knight C3, the other good possibility is to give a pawn for a very strong initiative by playing D5. Again, very, very interesting position. You know, everybody knows now, of course, you know, after D5, he has to take the pawn, and after knight H4, white has a strong initiative for the pawn, you know. And one of the nice example was my game against Muslov in this start tournament in Moscow. Finally, he made a draw, but it was very, very difficult game, you know. He had to defend, you know, by only moves all the time. You see. Okay, knight C3 is the main line. Knight C3, D5. Instead of knight D5, instead of D5, the theory recommends knight E4. After knight E4, a lot of analysis and so on, you know. And until now, it's not clear who is better. White is always slightly better, you know, after knight E4. But knight E4 is the main line. Okay, this is the alternative. Takes in D5, and everybody now in the modern time takes with the knight. See?
With the knight?
With the knight, yes. With the knight is also complicated. White may be a little bit better, but we'll see the difference. Like this, you accept the fact that you have to play with black with a small weakness on D5 later on. We'll see why. If you want to have a counter game or counter play with C5 later on, the pawn from D5 will be weak, and therefore it's easy to play for white. Okay, knight E5, the most active move, and as long as I know, the theory now recommends instead of queen C8, knight A6. This is considered the best way to play. But when they played this, it was not so much analyzed, so he accepted the fact that he can play with queen C8, which is not the best.
But knight A6?
Knight A6. I mean, he waits a little bit. White is always a little bit better, but this is the alternative. Now, preparing the move C5, and maybe in some other line to play C6, knight A6 to C7 in E6, you know. And the knight from C7 can protect 4 times the pawn from D5. This is the idea, you see.
Okay.
Okay, so he played queen C8. And after queen C8, bishop G5. Very logical, of course. Now, he wants to take in F6 and to lose the pawn from D5. So therefore, he played the queen in E6, protecting the pawn, you know. So now rook C1. Again, very logical, no? And finally, he wants some counterplay. No, he plays C5. Now, if you take in C5, it's not possible. You lose the knight from E5. So therefore, has to do something quickly. Knight D3, excellent move for white. He attacks twice in C5, but it's not the threat in C5. The threat is knight F4, you know. Knight F4, attacking 3 times the pawn from D5. If you lose the pawn from D5, it's already lost for black, you know. So what to do? I mean, he has to accept the fact that it's too late and it's a little bit too risky, C5, and he took the pawn in D4. And from now on, everything is almost forced, you know. So he took in F6, he took with the bishop, and now again, very strong, knight takes immediately in D5. So what to do now? He took, but okay, now again it's forced. Probably here the best way to do it was to accept the fact that everything is bad. No, the position now. After knight F4, he has to sacrifice the queen, maybe, you know. I mean, take in G2, knight takes F6, E6, and hope after bishop takes F1 that somehow you can resist. Knight takes F8, and now, just by miracle, bishop H3, you know. You don't lose immediately, and maybe you can hope to make a draw. But it's very difficult because now after queen D3, if he can see it, is also difficult. Queen d3, king takes f8. You want no, you don't take there. You play queen f3, and black is lost. Because you have to move the knight c6, and you have only 2 pieces against the queen, and it's lost for black, of course. But it was anyway better than the game, you see. But the game was a catastrophe, you see.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Let's see the game.
So after knight f4, queen d6, everything is forced again. Now knight takes d5. Now it's clear. You are losing at least an exchange. If you play now knight d7, you lose the rook from a8, and the exchange down is finished. I mean, by this highest level, of course, the technique is. So he played bishop g5, and after bishop g5, he gives the tactical possibility to play f4. No, you have to go back with the bishop. Now he retreats the knight, and everything is forced. After knight c3, everything is forced. What to do? Bishop, knight a6. You lose the whole rook, you see?
Yeah.
The diagonal. Because after knight c6, he moves the knight, and you lose the whole knight in c6. After knight c6, knight b5, you resign. Knight c6 instead of knight a6. Yeah, knight c6,
yes.
c6, yeah? Knight b5, and resign. You lose a piece.
The knight, you lose the knight.
Yeah, you have to move probably queen d7 or queen b4, and then the knight is lost in c6.
Yeah.
And then you lose also the pawn from d4. Terrible. Yeah. Of course. So he tried to, until the end, to find a small chance like this. Knight a6, okay, bishop takes, and now he attacks the bishop. Now 2 white pieces are attacked.
Yeah.
But it's too late. Now the simplest way is to play like this, like Spassky. He puts the knight there forever, in d5. He gives the bishop, of course. This is the simplest way. So now you don't have any counterplay with black, you see. Exchange up and complete control. Queen takes. So knight c5, of course. Now he played b4. He takes all the squares. Knight e6. Now queen back to d3. Rook e8. Now the last move, e4. And here he resigned.
He resigned, yes.
But look at the position. Exchange up. Zugzwang, complete Zugzwang for black, You don't have any move, any counterplay. You can't move in good conditions the bishop from d8. Well, the position anyway is lost,
Yeah.
But look at the queen in a8,
The queen, the bishop.
Terrible position, It's very rare that a player like Kortschnoj could lose such a game, in such a position. He doesn't have any move. It's, The knight is in e6 can't move. The bishop from d8 can't move. Yeah? Exchange and pawn up for white, and probably decisive attack also, here.
Yeah.
Catastrophe,
True. Right.
Only a small mistake. c5, too early.
The c5 here.
He tried too early the move c5, trying to free himself, After this, everything was forced. And, of course, afterwards, you don't have any possibility to react, I mean, because Spassky in that time was also very strong, probably the strongest Soviet grandmaster. Finally, in a few years, he became world champion, So.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.